for organizing these sessions. Um, so a few words about how I thought I would keep this presentation is, um, so I'll introduce a few topics, or I'll bring up some topics, and you guys can then we can have a discussion. For example, a two-way discussion. If you have some specific questions about that, please go ahead. So yeah, so I'm Shashwat. I'm a first-year grad student at Princeton in Electrical and Computer Engineering department, and I did my BSMS in physics from IISER Mohali. And yeah, so what I'm doing now is also is also similar to or related to what I was doing before, but in most of the US universities, or also elsewhere else too, uh, quantum computing and quantum info processing is mostly in the ECE department and not in physics department. So that's how I am in physics, not in physics department and in electrical and computer engineering department. So, so the first question is why PhD? I mean, when you have to apply for a PhD application or a PhD position, you should first know why PhD. I mean, is it really what you want to do? You should ask this question from yourself at a very early stage. Maybe I think it's September now, but maybe like in your fourth year sometime, in February or March, you should decide whether you want to do a PhD or not. And if you want to do a PhD, why? So there are a few points. For example, you should look at your career goals. Do you want to be an academician, or do you want to stay in academia? Is it um, what you want to do? Or after your PhD, is there a way that you can get a job in industry? For example, there are a few PhD programs after which you can get a few jobs in industries too, that are not limited to academia only. So define your career goals. Maybe some people are interested in pursuing an MBA, or a master's degree can be a proxy for a PhD. Just ask these questions from yourself. Second is financial goals. So PhD all over the world is not a well-paying job. Just remember that. So if you have other financial limitations or goals, for example, someone has some commitment with their family, they want to give back to their family or want to send back some money. So maybe PhD anywhere in the world is not the best thing to do if financial goals are overriding. So keep that thing in mind too. Next is you have done already a master's with 5 years. So I'm talking to people from IISER Mohali. So we have already completed a master's and invested 5 years of our life into getting a master's in physics or something. And then you are ready, or are you sure that you are gonna invest another at least 5 years? So think about that too. And after a PhD, what do you expect? I mean, you will be expert in a field, and you'll be the only one, maybe you will be the only one in whole world to know a very specific thing about that very specific field. So you are in your niche. So do you want to do that? And why do you want to do that? Maybe again, it's the question of career goals. So think about it too. And after this, if you have decided that you want to apply for a PhD, then of course define your research interests. So when applying for a PhD position, you should know what your research field looks like from the above. So have a 20,000 feet view of your research field at least. And it's okay to have multiple research interests. It's not that, okay, so if someone is working in, say, plasma physics, so cannot they change to astrophysics or something? I mean, they can. So you should have multiple interests. And if those multiple interests fall in the same department at a university, or they are similar, then I guess it will be advantageous to you only. Because the grad school admission committee will think, yeah, if this guy is not interested in this particular topic after a few months, then he has some other things to explore too. So sometimes it is beneficial. And starting a grad school is also a good time to switch. if suppose you are working in theoretical physics and you want to go in experiments, or vice versa. So the US grad schools give you an option, or liberty to do that. I mean, it's a bit rare and hard, but you can do that. That you can go from one field to another. So because you have to do some coursework for 1.5 year or 2 years of your uh, initial few years of your PhD. So I think it's a good time to switch to. And yeah, so just define these things. So what are your research interests? If you are interested in multiple things, or if you want to switch, and these are all related to your PhD. And so if they are related to your PhD application, it will help you in your SOPs too. Yep. So next, now if you have defined your research interests, now you should go ahead with shortlisting universities. And how do you do that? So a good way is to look for the potential PIs, or principal investigators, or professors that you are interested in working with. For example, if you want to work in quantum computing, then you should look for universities where there are professors working in quantum computing, or maybe in biophysics. You should have a look at that too. So instead of going by ranking that you want to apply to a few top ranking university, that's why you should apply to them. You should look for people who are working in the field that you are interested in, or you might be interested in after completion of your coursework in the PhD program. So look for PIs of your interest, and a good way of to do that is just Google. Just um, type your research field, and maybe a university too. For example, you can do this, that you look at a few rankings. For example, Shanghai US News, THE QS, and QS is not the only ranking in the world. Just remember that there are a few more good rankings, and I feel QS is overrated. So look for Shanghai US News. They sometimes give a better perspective too. So look at rankings. Maybe if you want to see which universities are where. So maybe rankings is a good way to find out the universities, and then maybe type this field and this university. Then you will know who is working in that field in that university. And then what comes is your personalized categorization. What I mean by this is, suppose you know the PIs of your interest, and now you know, okay, these are the universities where I may apply. Then make a category of three kind of university. The first kind of university is where you know that you are safe, like you can get in very easily. That's the first kind of university. Second, where you think that maybe I can get or maybe I cannot get, I don't know. So if that's the case, uh, that's like the second category, where like maybe category. And the third one is where um, you are like, so if you get into those universities, you're very happy. So that's the third category. Not very happy only. I mean, those are prestigious and about, yeah, very much talked about, very high ranking. So rankings are not always shit. So yes, of course. So go with personalized categorization and do like three in each category: three safe, three middle, and three hard to get. And this will help yourself only. And how to do that? I think a good way to do that is to talk to your seniors or your professors. They might have an idea of your profile, or you can tell them about your profile. And then you can ask them that if I apply to this university with this profile, do I have chances of getting in? So it's a good way to make uh, the categories of the university that I have just talked about. So at this point, does someone have any questions?
If I may, I do have a comment here.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, actually, like, I mean, I'm sure almost everybody, especially coming from IISER, they have high chances of getting into really good universities and, having successful applications. But so a good number that I heard from a lot of seniors and PhDs that you should apply for is, okay, the three categories that you mentioned is really important. You should always categorize your universities like that. But apart from that, you should always have, I mean, at least like 15 to 20 universities that you apply to. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the US, Canada, like elsewhere, but at least 20 universities that you apply to, because even if there are some universities that you have a high chance of getting into, there are a lot of unforeseen circumstances. You could be really good, but I mean, see, like COVID, nobody anticipated, and just things just went to shit. Excuse my language, but I think it's always safer to have more applications. And in case some people, because US applications and some Canadian applications are pretty expensive to apply to also. So it is also a good option to always check out for financial help with your applications. There are always these options available for, like, you could ask for financial assistance in the application.
Yes, I guess that's a good point, Sonal. Um, yes, she's right. So US applications are expensive too. So just bear this thing in mind. And if I have to tell you an average application cost, it is like maybe $70 to $80. No, I think $70 is the least. So maybe $90 is
Yeah.
somewhere the
For
average price.
University of California stuff, it's around $140
Yeah, I mean,
per application. That's
don't
the
fall
highest one
so
that I
easily.
paid.
Yeah, me
70 is the
too.
Funny
least.
way.
And they just increased it. It was like $120 before, and now it is 140.
Hmm.
Uh,
One
and
thing
they are kind of
yeah, like on that conversation, like one thing I found was that sometimes if you write to them, like, or if, like, you just write to them, like, I find this to be like too costly, or like, is it possible to get a fee waiver? Sometimes it actually goes through. Like, after a point, like, for my last 6 applications I wrote to them, 4 of them I got a fee waiver. So that's that was helpful.
Yeah,
But
that's encouraging.
and sometimes they also have these events which now, because of COVID and all, they have started moving it online, like these are events for basically getting people to apply. So if you can find about such events and they are doing it online, you can attend it, because if someone attends the entirety of the event, in the end they give a code which is the fee waiver code.
exactly.
So
Oh, wow.
so University of
Yeah.
Wait, so
Chicago did that. But
Oh yeah, Chicago did that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I've heard that.
like, whoever was till the end, this is your code.
Yeah.
So anybody who dropped out was a bit unfortunate, but like bit midway. So, but
You know what?
that
But I remember Chicago sent us all an email after. I mean, whoever attended an email with the code. So I think they were better at this. Instead of just showing it on the screen, they sent an email to everyone. That was good. Um, and also, so if you are there and attending those visit days of the universities, I think there are better chances that you get to know the university, the professors, because a few professors are also there, and maybe they think that you are interested. When they look at your application, they think, yeah, you are interested. Whether it helps or not, I'm not sure, but it should help. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah, please don't expect much, but you should be positive. I think, yeah, that's my second last slide, but I'll go ahead. So,
Um,
yes,
just one thing, Shashwat.
yeah,
Did you already talk about personalized categorization, or are you going to talk about it?
I did that
Okay, just
already.
one thing that I would specifically want to add, because I made that mistake, was to not. So what I was doing was I was looking at the department that I wanted to apply to. So for instance, physics, and then specifically the string theory department. But I never, until the last moment, shortlisted specific names that I would want to mention in my SOP.
Oh,
and
yes.
later and later when I was writing my SOP, which was in the last moment, like 15th is the deadline and 10th I'm writing my SOP, which is something you shouldn't do, but I was doing that. And that's when I realized that there were some universities where there were very, very few people that I wanted to work with. So it was like, okay, this person looks good, his work is good, I want to work with him,
Yep.
but there are no others that I can possibly work with. Like if this person says no, I don't have a backup option. So whenever you're looking at a university, make sure that you write down, like properly write down, either like on a piece of paper or Google Sheets or everything, at least 3 to 4 names that you would want potentially want to work with. If one falls apart, the other. and like so on. Please do that. Like I didn't do it,
Yeah,
but I realized that I should have. So yeah.
I guess Ruchira is right. And this is what I mentioned in the previous slide about having a broader um, area of research interest. So, I mean, it's not like if you want to work in, say, quantum computing, because it's my field, I can talk about this, then you shouldn't explore quantum communication or quantum sensing. So, yes. And also, so when I say PIs of your interest, be proactive and contact your potential PI. It helps sometimes. At least in what sense? You can get to know whether they are looking for incoming grad students or not. I mean, if you are suppose interested in X professor and he's not looking for any new student, then maybe you're yeah maybe then your application is not the best one, and you get rejection, and you are like, why did I get rejection? Because you only mentioned that PI's name or a couple of more PI's name. So that's why when you write your SOP, mention two or three other, at least two other professors than your professor of interest, so that the grad school has some options for you if your first choice falls apart. So remember that. And also, before applying, at least try to write them an email. It helps. I mean, it's not bad. Try to do that. Try to write an email. If you get a reply, you are lucky. That's good. That gives you inspiration and motivation to go on. And if you don't get a reply, then don't be discouraged. I think it's just a process, because they are professors. They get thousands of emails a day, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But
So
go ahead.
another thing, yeah. So talking about potential PI. So especially in the US, there is no direct PhD admission. Like you don't get into a lab per se or under a PI. You get into the program. So although I don't know of any cases where like somebody's gotten into a program and has failed to acquire like a PI or a lab, but
Mm.
I have been told it is possible. Like you get into the program, you finish your courses for like 1 or 2 years depending on the university, and then like the two or three people that you did want to work with, they might not have a place for you, or like something or the other goes wrong. So that's why it's really important to talk to the person beforehand, like talk to just about anybody, or even as soon as you get into the program, if you haven't had a chance, or
Yeah.
like they haven't had the chance to reply to you, because that would, I think, be really bad. I mean, you realizing you don't kind of fit in at the end of 2 years.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
why it is also important to. So I did not contact anyone, but I did realize that there were people because of funding shortage and stuff, they were not taking students. So yeah, it would have not harmed right to people. Moreover, also like specifically look at the department. Like I'm just like I'm emphasizing this because I have made this mistake. Look at the department. So it is possible that it might not be the best university according to the rankings, but it might be the best in your field of interest. So do not always just trust what the rankings say, but specifically like look at the department, and say if it is the same area that you want to work in as your MS thesis, talk to your advisor also, like your current advisor, because they will know a lot about it, and they will be like they will be willing to help you about it also, like tell you. And if not them, talk to your seniors. In fact, you can also contact current PhD and postdoc students there. I mean, look at us, we are all here willing to help you, and I'm sure people otherwise also are there to help you out. And this is something that I got to know only yesterday, is that there are Facebook groups where
Mm.
people help you out. So I wish I knew about it, but now you guys know, so you can utilize that and talk to more people. Yeah,
So
talking
yeah,
also.
join Facebook, join Instagram, join Telegram, and get in touch with people, of
Yeah.
course. And
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
wanted to add something to them.
I
Yes,
just want
yeah,
to add
continue,
one more
please.
thing that so if you haven't received, I mean, a reply from somebody you wrote to, does not mean that he or she has not read your email. So, for example, one of my friends wrote to somebody, did not receive a reply. Anyway, applied to that university. 3 months later, received an email from that person asking, "I can't see your application. Where's your application?" So people might be
Yeah.
interested even though they have not replied to you. So just keep this in mind. Okay, Shashwat, go on.
Yes,
I
and one
wanted to
more thing.
mention one thing.
Yeah,
Sorry,
of course, Shrikant, carry on.
just the fact that, like Ruchira was saying, as you make a list of the faculty you are interested in working with, Also keep in mind that there might be faculty in other departments who are closer to your interests than what
Oh
you are.
yeah.
So like Shashwat is in electrical engineering, but yeah, Shashwat didn't study electrical engineering in IISER. So
Yeah, so this is
keep that
true
in mind.
for University of Waterloo also. My own professor, like both of my professors, they're in the electrical and electronics department. And although I think in any case, like if your professor works in quantum computing, quantum information, whatever the umbrella institute for that particular field is, you might find them branched under the same page. But if you are a physics major or a chemistry major, don't just look at the physics page. I mean, also try to look
Yeah.
at the specific interest, like type out what you're interested to work in and see if there are people from that particular university, rather than just going on their page and looking for potential supervisors.
Yeah.
Just one last thing. So contacting potential PIs, this really helped me. Anywhere, so there are a lot of webinars and conferences going on, and like now you don't have a chance to physically go somewhere, but even with online seminars, try to interact with professors who might be there, who you think you might be interested to work in. And like even if it is not possible for them to take in, there are always other people they know who might be looking for students at other universities. They could recommend you to apply to places that you might not have thought of applying to initially. So it's always helpful in a million ways to look out for people and try to interact with them firsthand. So like when you write to them, you can always be like, oh, so I interacted with you at so and so conference, and like even if they don't remember you, there's a better chance that they might reply to you more positively than they would have otherwise.
So Sona is right. So during my interview at Princeton, um, the person who interviewed me, I met her in a conference, and I mentioned that thing in my SOP. So just to let you know, that thing happens. What Sonal is saying. And also, these US PhD grad school programs are always not. I mean, they are not different from. They're not very different from Europe type PhD programs. So what happens in Europe is, okay, you have a PhD funding, and then you get a student, right? And US seems like, okay, yeah, it's very liberal. You get into a grad school. They call it grad school, not a PhD, because it's not an employment directly here. It's an employment plus education both. So you get into a grad school and then you decide you have liberty. I think that's not exactly true. It's just some dressing over what Europe already does. So if they have funding for you, or people similar to you, then only they will hire you. Otherwise, they won't. So just remember this: if they have hired you, then they have hired you for a particular project in their mind. Of course, you have a liberty to change that, but in the beginning, it was the case. So don't think that US is very liberal and they just hire you because your profile is good. Sometimes you get rejection after with the best profile in the world. So it's about the PI you mentioned and whether if they have funding or not.
One last thing. So, this is something that I came across while looking at certain universities. So, I mean, some of you might know that, say, Harvard is very good. It has a lot of faculty that are really working big time in string theory. So, people who are interested in string theory, they would really want to apply to Harvard. So, some students might apply to Harvard in some other department and get selected. But if you want to change the field that you want to work in after applying and getting selected, say for quantum computing, and later you say you want to work in string theory or something like that, that's really bad practice, honestly. Um, i i would not recommend anybody doing that. So yeah, just side note.
Mm.
But then at the same time, also remember that there is a possibility to change. So, for instance, in my case, I was confused if I still wanted to continue in string theory or do say other things. But like I in my SOP, I still focused more on my strengths, which was my background in QFT and GR, and mentioned that I would want to maybe use this in other fields. But I did not like one thing that feel we should all do is not underestimate ourselves. So even though we would want to switch fields, we should still emphasize on our strengths, because as like if we have managed to learn a subject on our own, it just shows that we will be able to extend that to other topics also, because we were not born with an ability to learn QFT or GR, we acquired it. So if we were able to do that, we will be able to switch to other fields as well. So it's just good to mention your strengths in your SOP, and if you are interested in switching, maybe also mention that at some given point you would want to maybe transition to something which uses the same set of skills.
Yes, that helps for the grad school. I mean, it helps the grad school to decide whether to take you or not. So, of course, that's a good point. So, um, next, tests. You need to write some tests. So, yes, that's it. Is US is different from Europe in this direction. So, you have to write some tests. For example, TOEFL, it's English proficiency test, and I would say just write it by October, um, by the end of October, because you need to send the scores to the universities that you have shortlisted, and it takes time. Sometimes it takes 10 days, sometimes 15 days too, but usually it happens in 7 days. So just remember to take TOEFL as early as possible. If you have already taken it, good. If you have not yet taken TOEFL, so maybe go by October end or something. What I did, that was stupid. So I took TOEFL on 21st November, and most of my PhD deadlines were on 15 December, so it was a bit hectic. But then I realized sometimes universities are okay with TOEFL scores reaching a bit after the deadline. I mean, that is after 15 December. So, but still, take TOEFL as soon as possible, prepare, write some mock tests, and just go for that. Next one is GRE.
1 second, sir.
Yep.
I just had 2-3 comments about TOEFL. First thing,
Yep. Yeah, do it.
know that it's costly. So it is around 13,000 rupees. So just at least mentally be prepared for that. Secondly, keep your passport with you. Always keep your passport with you. I did not keep my passport with me, and I had faced so much problems. So like this is my
Oh,
holy grail
Even
of
I
avoid.
did that. Even I did that. I forgot where my passport was kept, and in fact, forgot that I had to carry my passport for my
So
test. One day before they called me, and I called Shashank, and we were both like frantically looking for our
so
passports. So
guys,
yeah.
your passport has to be with you when you go for the exam. Secondly, you must prepare for the TOEFL exam, but I would suggest don't be too stressed about it, because you don't have to get the best of possible scores. Most institutes, I think so the TOEFL is for 120 marks. I think if you have above 100, you are good to go almost everywhere. I'm not sure. Like some
Yeah,
of the
100 is like the most selective
yeah,
also
yeah,
as the cutoff as 100.
and it is in general not that difficult to get that score. However, you must prepare, but I would suggest like you do those practice papers and stuff, but don't be too stressed about it. You will get a
yeah.
decent score.
Don't buy
How
an
about
extra
IELTS?
credit exam.
Yeah, so
IELTS.
I don't have
IELTS.
experience in IELTS. Some.
I mean,
I
what do
gave
you
the IELTS
ask about
exam.
IELTS? So, yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead with the question.
So my question is, instead of TOEFL, what about IELTS? If I submit the IELTS score, that too works, right?
It
Yeah,
depends on the
that too works
university
very
actually.
well. Even I receive a lot of questions with people, asking should I give TOEFL or should I give IELTS. So there's no much of a difference between these two exams as far as my experience is concerned. And similarly for IELTS, there's this structure of bands, and you're supposed to have a band of 7 at least,
Ah,
with a minimum of 6.5 in all different 4 fields. So there's
okay,
basically reading, writing, speaking sections, and listening section also. So you're supposed to get a minimum of 6.5 band in each of them, and an overall band of 7. If you're
okay,
above that, then you're good to go.
okay.
And the other thing that same as TOEFL is, it doesn't require a large preparation time. For me, it was like just 3 to 4 days. That's more than enough, I guess. If you're here at IISER and you're good enough with English, it mostly takes you a week or so to be exactly prepared for the exam, and you can go give it a shot. And I can guarantee that you will get a good score, provided that you don't feel the pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just be relaxed. It's just a language. You learn it. And next thing is GRE. So I didn't take GRE. and it was because it was waived for me and for most of us during this application cycle or the previous application cycle. But check, is it necessary for you? I still believe that GRE is not usually required, but you should check with your university because they give it, they
Yeah,
give this
each
information on
department
their,
can have like
yeah,
check the department. Some departments
check
are
the
like
department.
they have permanently removed it. Some are
Yes,
like we need the general GRE and not the physics GRE, and yeah, so
yeah.
like just check once
Please
or
do
what
that.
is what
Please
they're
do
doing.
that check. Yes, right, and sure.
Yeah. In fact, even for TOEFL and IELTS, they ideally shouldn't be very specific. But if you're applying to, say, the UK also and US, and just check if they are like more, leaning towards either of these exams. Just check that
Yes,
once. I
that
think
happens.
I did come across some university which said they preferred IELTS more over TOEFL. I didn't apply there in the end, but it's just good to know like what all they require. Add that
Yeah.
in your Google when you're mentioning the names. Also add this.
Mhm. And also, so for GRE, like some universities specify that they will need physics GRE. So first thing is the application for physics GRE or any subject GRE starts pretty early. So like I think by
Yeah.
mid-September the applications close. Make sure you don't miss it out because it's only once every year. So if you're planning to apply, say this year, MS-17 especially, you
Mhm.
should consider like looking at the application dates and like the possible exam dates. Second, if by any chance you miss it, and I know like one or two people who did miss it, and they still got into places that required subject GRE for sure. For that, you can talk to your advisor, tell them why you couldn't take the subject GRE. They might make an exception for you. So look out for that.
Also,
Yeah.
I have another point to add regarding this preparation for these exams. I really suggest you people to contact your seniors who have already written these exams, because if you randomly start searching for a preparation material, you will end up wasting a lot of time. For those
And
of
money.
us who have already taken this exam, please contact us and we'll provide you. We can, in principle, provide you with the specific material that will really help you achieve your desired score, and that you won't end up spending a lot of time just preparing for these exams.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely, very
I
good
have a
advice.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a personal experience in this. So, I took TOEFL in Switzerland, and it was very expensive. It was like $400 or something, or somewhere near that. And um, I prepared with the help. So I was in contact with Shashank. He told me some resources from YouTube, and then I was in contact with a friend from Iran. She told me few places. I mean, few websites where you can go and practice your TOEFL, and that was, I think, not legal or the legit thing to do. But yeah, we figured something out and we did it. So there are resources where you don't need to buy mock tests, and those mock tests look like um, that of the official ETS uh, mock tests. So yes, so the best advice that I can give you for TOEFL is to write mock tests. That helps. I just did three, and yeah, I was good to go. So Anshuman has shared some link. You should look at that
Yeah,
too.
that's basically the Google Drive link about requirement of GRE for different American physics and astronomy or any related department.
Mhm.
And your test scores, of course, GRE, TOEFL if TOEFL GRE if GRE if necessary, and then letters of recommendation. I'll come to that. Personal essay, I'll to that. And other document, what are other documents? Usually they may ask for your CV, so prepare a good CV. They might ask for your publications. What else they can ask for? And sometimes they can ask for a diversity statement. Yeah, I'll come to that too.
They
So
also
usually,
ask for like a long list of courses that you've taken. At least
Yeah,
in all
courses.
my applications, I had to sit
Yeah.
and fill out what all courses I took, what all textbooks I followed. Just
Textbooks.
like have it typed somewhere, like when you are filling one form, and then just copy paste everywhere. It
oh wow,
takes like a lot of
I
time.
only did
And I did that
twice.
just one day before the deadline. It was torturing. So
Yeah, I did only twice. I didn't have to. So I think it is program specific. So
yeah,
I applied to quantum programs. Ruchira
right.
might have applied to other programs.
Yeah.
So for me, I only had to write, did it, I had to do it twice only, but she had to do for every time. So of course,
Almost every time, yeah.
almost every time. So, yep. So, okay. So what are your essays? I think be honest with your research statement. The first essay most universities ask for is your research statement or your personal research statement. um Write your own journey. I think it is the best thing you can do for yourself, because you want to sell yourself. I mean, how good or why you are a good suit for this university. And if you can convince them just like in 500 words or 1000 words, that's an art. So start early. Maybe September is kind of, I mean, it's the time where you should start, but people start writing their um, SOPs or research statement or essays in July, August, and get it reviewed by seniors, by your friends, maybe not by your friends who are also applying in the same university or in the same department. Don't do that. Go to your seniors or your advisor that you are working with currently. So I mean, that's a good thing to do. So write your own research statement. Just don't ask seniors for, okay, Bhaiya, can I have your research statement? And I'll just copy it, change my name and that. Please don't do that. So I have received a few emails from many people. They're like, send me your CV or send me your research statement. And then I see this. I mean, they use it. They send emails to different professors, and then they are like, "Why isn't it working? Why didn't you send me a template that works for Harvard people?" I mean, it doesn't work that way. It's your story. So write your own story. I mean, what you did was my story and you just tempered it. So I think professors or the person who is reading it, they are not stupid. They are smart enough to know whether it is your story or not. So just be honest with your research statement, because it is your personal statement. It is what you are. And sometimes universities also ask for diversity statements. I didn't write it for every university, but I think for UCs they asked something like this. Princeton asked it. um, I guess I'm not sure if
Stanford
right.
asks for it.
Stanford asked for like, yeah, some 200 words or something. Yep, it does. I mean, that was short, but yeah, they do. So diversity statement is your identity, and why it is important, I'll tell you. So every university in the US, most of the universities are very much concerned about what their cohort looks like. So I mean, they want the cohort to be diverse. They don't want people just from a similar background, for example, only from America, not from a single ethnic race, not from a single region in the world. So sometimes it is helpful, not usually for the PhD application. Of course, it is helpful in the undergrad applications, but if you write that you belong to some underrepresented community, and if you do, really, it might help. But I'm not sure. But still, diversity statement is totally about you. I mean, what do you do? What are your hobbies? Maybe you are a musician, or you are a coder, or you go for traveling, or you have managerial skills. So all these things help. What's your identity? How do you identify yourself? So that's where diversity statements come in. And also, they also want to see how will you contribute to the community, because in the US, grad schools are like schools. I mean, you live in a community, you are a part of the community. So how will you contribute to that community is where this diversity statement comes in. So
I
it's
have
you.
I
okay.
also had something to say.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add after you're done though. I just want to add a few things about the SOP. So
Yeah,
once
yeah.
you're
SOPs, yes, of course, carry on. That's why. So
Uh,
yep,
okay.
carry on.
Right.
um,
So
Let me
yeah,
say
so
one thing and then
the,
Ruchira can say.
yeah,
I just had one thing to say. You write multiple draft of your SOP. Don't start
Yes.
writing your SOP too late and submit only one draft to the university. You write it again and again and again. So, I mean, it will torture you. It tortured all of us. But I would suggest you do it a little bit earlier, like Shashwat said, September. So you can write a draft and then you can completely forget about it, write one more after a while that's completely new, and then try to compare and see which one represents your strengths better. And I would suggest you talk to as many people as you can. For instance, when I would write my SOP, I would also show it to a couple of my friends, like from other majors also, who know me well, who will say, "Oh, you did this before, but you didn't write about that." So, like
Yeah.
Ruchira would do that for me. So, you may not understand yourself. You may underestimate your abilities, and maybe a couple of friends can come and tell you, "Oh, you actually did this, and you didn't write that." So, make sure
Yeah.
you write as many as you can. That will really help. Yeah, Ruchira, go ahead.
So yeah, I was also told the same thing, that start writing your SOP earlier, and try to weave a story. And I never understood what that meant until I had to write an SOP. So I will just tell you what I would do and how it could help you. So for instance, all my internships, at least when I would look back, seemed very disconnected to me. I was like, okay, how is an internship in quantum foundations at all related to quantum gravity or QFT? But if you think about what your mental state was at that point of time, like what led you to choose another internship, you will realize that there is actually a story. It's just that it might seem very arbitrary to you, but maybe you were thinking something, which is why you chose something totally different. So mention that. So because, so if I look at my first internship and my last internships, they were totally different. But what I did was I started, so it is always very difficult to write the introduction. So I just started with my internships because that is something I'm confident about, that is something I know. So I started with that, and then I tried linking one to the other. So for instance, how did I go from my first to the second one? What is it that led me there? I wrote that. Then second to third, and so on. And one thing to note is that at all the places that you apply, you will not need different SOPs. It will essentially be the same SOP, and it is only the last part that will change. And that is the part about what you want to do now. Now that you have all this experience, what do you want to do ahead? So that is the only part that will change, and that you can keep modifying once you have this list of people that's mentioned. And like Shashwat mentioned and Shashank mentioned, that you should start writing your SOP early. I didn't do that because I was scared कि I don't have anything to write. I was like, what will I even write? I have no idea about where my MS thesis is going. So maybe I should wait and see where it shapes and then write that. But that was honestly like a big mistake, because I had like a bunch of other internships that I could have written about. And it's not like, in 2 months my project just completely changed. It was essentially the same thing. I just had a few more details to add, which I wouldn't have been able to mention in the SOP anyway. So whatever you have right now, just start writing it and start sharing it with people, because you might have a coherent story in your head, but you might not be saying it out loud. So showing it to people will help. And one more thing that I at least feel is important for theory, I'm not sure about experiments, is that it is important to also mention the graduate level courses that you've taken. So at least at IISER, we do end up taking a lot of graduate level courses, which other people at other universities, like maybe in the US, might not. So for instance, I had taken a QFT course, phase transitions course, like all these 6 level courses that we take are graduate courses. So it is important that you mention that, because at least as a theory student, I realized that it was very difficult for me to do a significant project. For instance, half my time would just go into acquiring all the skills that I needed. And it wasn't until like 2 or 3 years that I had something, of my own to do. So what mattered then was the courses that I had taken. And I made sure that in my SOP, I mentioned that I had a good background in, say, QFT or GR because of the courses I had taken, or because of the kind of work I had done. Because students, even after coming to grad school, like say students in the string theory department at least, take at least 2 more years to take more courses and then like properly start working on a project. So I know people in my group who are in their third year and who are still learning things. So I don't expect myself to have like publications in my second or third year in that area. and you will also not be expected. But if you have like a background in QFT, GR, or these kind of things, make sure that you mention that. If you have learned something on your own, so for instance, I would make efforts to learn, say, differential geometry on my own, or like at least try to know more about topology and those things. I made sure to mention that in my SOP, that I have taken efforts to learn something on my own, and I feel that I can do that with other areas too. So don't underestimate yourself. Write whatever you think you have done, and your friends and like peers and mentors will always be there to guide you, to tell you what more you could add. So just start early. Just start writing whatever you have. It will take a good shape in some time. Yeah.
Yeah, guys.
Mm, yeah, Shashwat, even I also have a point right here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, as Shashwat mentioned in the very first slide, so why do you want to pursue a PhD? Your
Yeah.
SOP should reflect that point, like why you actually want to do a graduate study in this field. Don't, please just don't go writing like, research interests me and I want to do this, I want to do that. This is very common lines that everyone will use. Okay, as long as you are not really clear about why you actually want to pursue a PhD, that then you are not going to have a very good introductory line, and you are going to lose the reader's interest in the very beginning. So please be very clear about why you want to pursue a PhD. Also, yeah, the Rusia has mentioned that the core of your SOP remains the same. But I have noticed that when you apply to different universities, they have kind of a checklist there that your SOP should mention these particular things. Please make sure that once, when you are ready with your SOP, please just go through that checklist once to make sure that you are not missing a point, because that really negatively impacts your application. Yeah, that's it.
One
Yeah.
one point about the CVs also, if I may, Shashwat. I'm sorry
Yeah,
for
please carry on.
disturbing you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
so
okay.
thing is, so like obviously SOPs are honestly the most important thing, but I think CVs are like also, I mean, not everybody will straight away go to your SOP. They might look at the CV first and also try to shortlist people. So as Ruchira mentioned, just like keep a list of all the courses and textbooks that you followed, because that is very important to keep in your CV. Whether they ask for it separately as a list in applications, which they do sometimes, that is separate, but like make sure you highlight that, because a CV is more like, they will browse through it to see if you have the basic qualifications in the first place, and then they go on to the SOP. Also, try to keep your CV very precise, and like don't add things there that would be better suited in your SOP. Say like a very huge detail about all of your internships. Say like 2 pages of your CV are only about the internships that you've done, and the details about the work that you've done. So keep it more like a checklist, so that even if somebody browses through it, they get exactly the kind of information that a CV is supposed to do, and it is separate from the information that you are going to give in the SOP.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing that I was told, and I at least tried to incorporate that into my SOPs, was that your selection committee might not necessarily have all people from your background. So, for instance, if I come from a QFT background, it's not necessary that people reviewing my applications also will have the same background. So, it is essential that you present it in a way that is accessible to everyone. So, they are coming from a physics background, but not specifically from your background. So it's always better to be aware of that. And which is why giving your SOP to people in other say fields, or your friends or peers, will help, because they will be able to tell you if they can understand what you've written or not.
I agree with Ruchir and Sonal. So when I wrote my first draft, it was too technical. That's what my friends told me. And they had gotten into very good places like Harvard, Caltech. And they were like, bro, I've never seen this technical SOP ever. So I was like, oh, really? So should I change it? They were like, yeah, change it. Make it sound more layman. So I was like, okay, I'll change it. And then I wrote my first draft. 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 So just try to keep it not too technical. I mean, and that's where talking to your friends and seniors, it helps. So yeah. And one more thing I wanted to add to research statement is, if you have ever had an opportunity to talk to any of your potential PIs in any way, maybe a seminar, email, whatever, try to mention that. It helps. It helps them to remind of you that you were somewhere there, or you have been in contact with them some time ago. So just try to do that. That helps sometimes. Um, yeah. So letters of recommendation.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Shashwat, I just wanted to say that we planned the session to run till 6:30 and it's already 6:25. So can you rush a little?
Yeah, man. I think I'm just
So
towards
I
the
mean,
end. I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
how long do you have to go? I mean, how many
I can.
slides do
I think
remaining?
two or three more.
Okay, okay,
Two
yeah,
or three more.
then yeah, I think that's okay.
So letters of recommendation. Um, talk to your referees first. Ask them if they can write maybe 10, 15, 20 letters of recommendation for you. Just do that. I mean, that's very important. If you don't talk to them, it doesn't work. So maybe they are overwhelmed by the number of SOP requests you are sending them, and they just stop responding to your SOP requests. Oh, sorry, your LOR requests. So do that. I mean, talk to your referees, and your referees must know you as a person. Yeah, this is what I write. I mean, if someone is referring you, they must know what kind of person you are, what are your strengths, and what are your weaknesses. Um, and be wise in choosing your referee. For example, I have a personal experience that I choose one of my referees, and wherever I asked or wherever I applied his recommendation, and I didn't get into that program. So sometimes referee can be a crucial. I mean, referees are a crucial part of your application, but a negative point in your referee's statement, or maybe they just like in layman terms, or maybe they just like very generic letter of recommendation. If that's the case, then it may harm your application. So just try to find people who can write some good words about you. They can use some good adjectives, and the LOR that they are writing uh, is a, I mean, it stands out. So just make sure that this happens, and you can talk to your referees about that. You can ask them, will you give me a good recommendation or not? Just be clear about it. I mean, you are in professional life. Don't just think that I'm sorry that for that. I mean, just don't think that they will be always writing a good recommendation. Just ask them if they will be writing a good
Yeah,
recommendation.
it's not just always about like they might be I mean, they might think that you're a good student. It's just that they might not be able to put it well. Like it's also
Yeah,
about how they put it.
yeah,
And one, I mean, you definitely can't read what they're writing about you, but you can use like, so for instance, you must have applied to different programs as like for internships and so on. So you could see if those like at those times if these recommendations had worked or not. Because for instance, I was told whenever I went to a different program, I was told that my recommendation letters were really good. So I knew that okay, the people who were writing letters for me were writing good things and were writing it in a good way also. So both things matter: how what they think about you and how they write it. Like the how
yes.
part is something that we can never determine, and you can always use like your past internships and past letters to gauge like what and how they're writing.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. But still, try to talk to them and ask this question if they will write a good recommendation letter or not. It helps. I mean, it doesn't affect you negatively. They won't get offended. Oh, this guy asked me this question. Now I won't talk to them, or I will write a bad recommendation. It's not that. Just talk to them. Next, do grades and publications matter?
Shashi,
Yes, they do. Yeah, yes,
just a
they
minute.
do. Yep.
So when you apply for the US applications, you have this thing that you waive your right to access those recommendation letters. So these applications do provide you a way to access them, but please
But
don't go
don't
for
do
it.
that.
You always have to select that option that I waive my right to see the recommendation letters.
Yep.
Because if you don't, the two important things. First is that your recommendation letters will lose their value, and second is that your referee may altogether refuse to provide you a recommendation letter just because
Exactly.
you have chosen that option. So
Yeah.
please
So
make
never do
sure
that.
that you select that. option as I waive my right to access this recommendation letter.
Yep.
I had one point to mention. Sorry, Shashwat. So about a letter of recommendation, like Shashwat says, you must ask the people if they're willing to provide you a good recommendation. You also must ask them how many they are comfortable with. So one problem I had was, so it came around November. I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to these 10 places, which means I require 10 into 330 referee reports, letter of recommendation. But then I asked one of my guides, and he said he may not be comfortable in giving me so many. He said he will give me 3 or 4. So you need to work on that as well, because what if you have a guide who only wants you to give you 4 or 5? Then the number of universities you apply to might get affected by that. So you have to ask them, like Shashwat said, feel free to ask them, how many will you give me? If he says I'll give you 5, then okay, you will ask him only for 5. Some of my guides were okay to give many, some were not. So like you need to know this earlier, because I was stressed during the time of my application because I found out some people were not willing to give me those many. So yeah, also keep this in mind. Yeah.
And so I was lucky at Princeton, because what happened, one of the guides, not the guides, the referee whose reference wherever I used, I never got into. He kind of, he firstly said that he will give me recommendation for Princeton, but then finally he just chickened out. He didn't do that, and I had to ask a postdoc person to write a recommendation for me, and that postdoc person gave me a good recommendation. I guess that's why I'm here. And so yeah, sometimes you get lucky, but be aware of this thing. So talk to your PI, and be smart in choosing your referee, because that's the most important part.
Yeah, this is actually another thing that a lot of people don't know. You can ask for postdocs or senior PhDs in your group, or like others that you worked with previously, to give you recommendations.
Yeah, you're right.
And for places that say that you can give more than 3 recommendations, do that. Because I was called for an interview at some place, and they told me that my recommendations had not reached. But since I had given like multiple people's name, at least 2 or 3 had reached. So that can also happen.
Yeah, you say that. So next, do grades and publications matter? Yes, the answer is yes. But I have one comment here. So does it mean that you have to be a 10-pointer? I mean, not necessarily. See, I'm not a 10-pointer. Okay, I never got any academic excellence award from IISER Mohali, but I could still make it to a very good university. I have a publication. But I think what was important in my profile was that I had good grades, and I had a previous experience that showed, yes, this guy can do research. Maybe my letter of recommendations were good, and maybe what I wrote in my SOP was promising to the grad school. They thought, yes, this guy, if we hire him or if we accept him, he can do research here. So yes, there are a few subtleties. Do grades matter? Yes, they're important, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have an award in academic excellence, you can't get into a university. Do publications matter? Yes, of course, very important. But if you don't have it, just try to portray yourself as a person who can do research. I did that. Um, yeah, I also made a small website where I showed what I have already done before. So it was a Google site, not even a website. And I provided the link to that website or Google site in my application, and might be they that might have helped me, because I didn't have any publication, so I had to do that. All my reports and everything was there, with the permission of my previous supervisors. So yes, grades and publications matter, but if you don't have that, try to be a bit forthcoming. Just be there to show that yes, you are there and you can do research. Last slide, it's positive approach. Be ready for rejections. You will get many rejections. And don't be overwhelmed by rejections. Don't be discouraged by rejections, because it's part of life. You will not always be accepted everywhere. So just be ready for rejections. And apply to other continents also. I mean, why not Europe? I mean, why not Canada? I mean, Canada is the same continent, but another country. Or why not some other good Asian universities like in Singapore or somewhere? So look for other universities in different places of the world too. And last, as Ruchira mentioned a few times that she thought that she didn't have anything to write, or don't underestimate yourself. Yes, we suffer from this. We sometimes think, yeah, maybe there are so many people applying, I should not be the best one, or how will I be the best one? There are so many people applying, there will be people better than me. Of course there are a few people better than you, but you are not the worst.
Yeah, in fact, I want to add to this. The current university that I'm at University of Chicago. I
Hmm.
wasn't going to apply there. I had applied to a lot of big universities already, and I was like, I have spent so much money. Why do I want to spend money on another rejection?
Yep.
And it was like so. This was on December 14th. Deadline was on 15th, and I called my mom. I told her कि मैं नहीं apply करूँगी. I have already applied to a lot of big universities. This is one of them. I will not get in. But my mom was like, no, see, you've paid $20 for TOEFL, might as well apply. You have an SOP ready. It's okay if you don't want to work more on it. Just send it. We'll see what happens. Like, it's just $70 more. I mean, it is a lot, but we'll see. And I got into this university with a fellowship.
Yay.
I had, so all I'm saying is that just like apply, just go for it and
Yes.
like, let it be. We'll see what happens. If you have decided you want to apply, don't hesitate, just go. And I know that it can be like, at least for me, it took a toll on like my emotional and mental health. I was very, very stressed out. There were times I would just start crying. Matlab, I am writing my SOP. 5 minutes later, I'm just sitting and crying in front of my laptop because it is
Existential crisis.
stressing.
Just
It
kidding.
just like stresses you out. But what helped me was being around my friends. We were all going through the same experiences, and it really, really helped to sit with them and write the application together, to talk to them, to go on walks. These things do help. Like, it helped me, and I am sure it will help like you guys also. Don't get overwhelmed. It is natural to get overwhelmed, but we will get through this. It's just like, what is it? It's just like one PhD application. You don't get it, it's fine. You move on to something else. It's not like such a big thing also. So yeah.
Yeah, I would like to also add to this. You only need one position in this whole world. You don't want, I mean, suppose you get from 10 top 10 universities of your choice. What will you do? Man, you will be more confused. So I think rejections help sometime in making a better decision. So, and
So I
during
just
COVID,
wanted
so
to add that,
yeah,
like Ruchi was saying, you must be prepared for rejections, and yeah, just try to apply for more. So I wanted to stress that even if you feel like a US style position will suit you more, don't hesitate to apply to other places also. Who knows? I mean, so I was absolutely sure I want to do my PhD in the US, but I'm not doing so simply because I didn't get it. But I found a position that more suits me, and that is not in the US, it's in Europe. So there's no harm in applying to several places. Just in case you get something and I mean, you think it's good, you can do that. So, and Europe is free. Trust me, when you apply to Europe, after applying to US, you'll be like, I'll apply to 100 places because it's free. So yeah, okay. And yeah, be prepared for rejections. Like all of us here, as I said before also, have faced a lot of rejections, like all of us. So I got my PhD position after 18 rejections. So yeah, I'm sure others also have similar experiences. So just be ready for that. And like Ruchira said, friends really matter. And yeah, get support from as many places as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, one thing. So when if you have a chance of interacting with your PI before you submit your application, ask them what department you should apply to, because sometimes they might expect you to apply to, say, the electrical department, or physics also has in some universities multiple like sub departments that you can apply through. So just ask them what department you should apply from.
Yeah, and even after applying, stay in touch with them. Like at UCLA, I applied to the astronomy department, and the professor I told him like, sir, I've done the application, and he's like, dude, we are not going to take any international students this year in the astronomy department. Change your application, apply to the earth science department. I'll take you whatever way we want. I can, and he did do
I'm
that.
gonna talk about that too. Yeah.
He made some changes which allowed me to again update my SOP after the deadline, and then I applied again to the earth science department, and I got that. I didn't finally choose that option, but yeah, like if you have applied, yeah, like if the professor is in multiple departments, let them know which department you applied to, and what he will let you know if there is any issue.
I want to talk about the effect of COVID on previous applications. But let me
So
finish
one
with
thing,
this.
Shashwat, one
Yep.
last thing that I wanted to add was that when you are applying, also talk to your friends and who they are taking recommendations from. So, for instance, Shashank and I, we discussed where all we were applying and who we were taking recommendations from, because we do want to support each other and at the same time make sure that we don't hinder each other's applications. So, we made sure that we never took recommendation from the same person in the
Same
same
program.
department. So we like just be open about it because we want to support each other also, right? So just like be open about it,
Yeah.
discuss with your friends, and yeah.
I guess that's all. And good luck, guys. Always feel free to reach us. I mean, just text us if you have our WhatsApp, or send us an email if you know our email addresses, or just call us if you have our numbers. So just, I mean, if you want our guidance, you should talk to us. I mean, we won't just come to you, hey, you should do this. No, we won't be doing this. You should be uh, reaching out. And don't even, I mean, just don't reach out to us. Reach out to other people who from IISER Mohali who are at other places. Maybe reach out to other people from different universities whom you know of, and um, talk to your current advisor also. For example, your master's thesis advisor. They sometimes help. Um, they sometimes help in choosing a good university and a PI for you. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I
So
think
I'll
that's all.
request everybody to type their email addresses in the chat box. So Sonal,
I
Ruchira,
mean,
Shashwat,
Yeah.
Anshuman, Saksham.
So one last thing,
so,
this is mostly, it might be true mostly for theory people because I don't know how the experimental scene is in India. But know that when you are applying to the US or anywhere outside India, it is going to be a huge change for you. Like when we are applying, we are so much into the process of applying that we don't take that into account. But once you arrive here, like this has been my first international trip, and it is like such a big cultural shock. Like
mhm.
I wasn't expecting this, and I did not take into account the other things that might also, like, that I should have, like for instance the cultural change, being alone, adjusting to this place. These might be minor things as opposed to maybe your research, but for me it was like a big thing. So also like think about that when you're applying and thinking about these things.
I had just one minor comment, which Ruchira and Shashwat have mentioned. Uh, if you want to change field when you apply, for instance, you've been doing a lot of work in certain area, and you would like to switch and work in something different now. I would still suggest you to spend more time on your SOP, emphasizing on what you did, rather than why you're interested in shifting. So I think a mistake I made was I would say, okay, I've done all of this. Now I want to do this. And I want to do this because of the following reasons. But maybe it would have been better if you spend more time saying, I did this because I was interested in this, so on, so on, so on. And like Ruchira said, maybe spend a line or two saying you would like to shift. Because my experience applying to the US was I wanted to shift from optics to condensed matter, and it didn't really work out well for me because I don't have experience in condensed matter. But had I possibly wrote much more about what I learned in optics, it would have helped my application. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. So
So
yeah. So I'll
Abhijit,
yeah. So I mean, I'll speak a few things before we end. So one thing is that if you don't have great grades, then it is advisable to appear in the GRE subject test, because that will compensate for your, I mean, so in some sense you have to prove to the admissions committee that you know the basic physics that they expect you to know. And I mean, if you have bad grades, then the best way to compensate for it is to, not the ideal way, but the best available way is to take the GRE subject test. And I will define very precisely what a bad, I mean, what do I mean by saying if you have bad grades. So I'll say that if you have more than two C's in the physics major courses, then better take the GRE subject test. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, these US people scorn C's and D's in physics courses very much. Second thing is, I mean, if you don't make it in a university, do not think that it reflects your abilities. And I know other people have also mentioned this again and again, but I'll illustrate this with an example. So, one university that I applied to, they did not take a single international applicant that year. Zero was the number of applicants that they took. So I mean, and later on, I mean, it just turned out that they were not interested in taking any that year. But I mean, I guess they just opened the application portal to earn some dollars. That's it. The third thing is, so this is a very funny trick that I never employed, but one of my friends told me. So if you and I am not sure how ethical this is, but I mean, I just want to put it to you that when you write to your PI, one way to just increase your chances of getting a reply from them is that you write an email, and in the email you will certainly say somewhere that I am attaching my CV and my SOP and whatever blah blah, but don't actually attach it. The next day you write another email saying sorry I forgot to attach this and send another email. So this way your email is going to feature twice in their inbox, and this kind of increases the probability that they will open and reply to it. Yeah.
Um, so I guess we'll stop for now. We spoke for a lot of time. Any questions from the audience? Feel free to ask us now. I'm sure this must have been a lot of information.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Vedant, please go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, allow me to be informing for about 10 seconds and just say that it's great to see you guys. And thank you so much for this very insightful session and all the work that you've been putting in. So I would also like to issue a clarification here that I'm not a physics major, I'm a chemistry major. So it is quite possible that my questions, the answers to my questions might be different. But I mean, I'd just like to get a perspective from the group here. So, at least in my case, from what I'm observing, it's not that I'll find even two people from a department with whom I want to work. It's always just one person. So, in that case, do you think it is good for me to say include it in my SOPs that I'm targeting someone very specific without mentioning it explicitly, of course? But is it a wise approach to go for one person, as in the SOP, implicitly, and then write two other people with whom I could potentially work? Or should I still boil it down to a more generic SOP and still write about 3 to 4 people with whom I can work?
I would
One
personally not
advice.
mention just one person, and
Yeah,
I would talk. I would not like uh, tell
Um,
who I would largely prefer working with. I
No,
would
no, not
generally.
directly, of course. It's just that when I'm writing about my research interests, they might suit one person's profile the best, and in other cases, of course, it won't because there's only one person who
Yeah,
works in that field.
right.
So, is that a way to go about things, or should I just not mention about my very specific research interest and go in a more generic sense of the way and talk about, say, a field instead of a very particular niche that I am interested in? Which approach do you people think might be better?
um, I just have one comment. I don't know if it's the solution, but if your application suits most one person, please do write to them first to ensure they're willing to take them. If he says no, then it's like your entire SOP is not really structured in the right direction. But apart from that, I don't know the answer to this
Yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
so
so in case they don't reply, because a lot of professors, especially in big universities, don't reply very readily. So try to talk to their current PhD students to at least just like ask them if the PI is willing to take in new students. Because, like, I mean, your applications and your qualifications apart, they might not even be taking students. So,
yeah,
like, just try to get at least some confirmation because you apply, because some of these applications are like, pretty expensive and like very time consuming also. And not just time consuming, they take a toll on you. Like, just these applications suck
Very time
your
consuming.
energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be a
Very.
Yeah.
And
changed person
always
after you
write
finish this.
from your like official IISER email ID. I mean, that just adds more, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, don't use your Gmail ID. Use your IISER or some other. Like, I had an ICTS email ID. I would use that. But use either IISER or ICT. I mean, whichever email, official email ID you have.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll just add that I mean, so the reason that any of us have not answered Vedant's question very precisely is the fact that none of us know a precise answer to this, because in some sense, in terms of these fine matters, US applications are a bit like lottery. So, I mean, we don't know how the two options are going to pan out in different cases. However, if I were you, then I won't even apply to a place where I have an indication that the person is taking grad students this year. That's it.
Even if the PI that you contacted via email, the specific PI you are targeting, and even if it happens that he replied to you in a positive way, please just don't directly go for it. I have a strong reason to believe
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't fall for it. I really suggest that you mention at least 3 to 4 people in your SOP.
No, so here's the thing. I will obviously I'll mention 3 to 4 people. It is just that maybe I was not able to put across my question more accurately. So when I'm writing my SOP, I can either go for a very particular field of interest, and in that sense, even without me saying it, it is going to be blatantly obvious that I'm targeting one particular person with whom I will have a good match. As opposed to that, if I go for a more generic field, and in that sense, I can maybe pull in 2, 3 more people. Do you think that will help? The only problem is in that case, I won't be able to showcase the full potential of the research that I've done up until now. So in that case, that might say reduce the credibility of my application, but it might be
No,
better.
no. The
Yeah.
thing is, what I would say is that even if if your experience so far is going to push you towards a niche, they don't expect you to commit to the niche. Like even if everything, like for example, if whatever I've done is pushes me towards doing, say, extra computational extragalactic astrophysics, and in that I'm focusing on galaxy mergers. Even if that it is pushing me towards this a very niche part of the thing, it does not mean that I will only work with, like I will work only in that, because often there, if you put like that, it is seen as if that you are not flexible enough, and if it's just one person and they are not able to take you, even if they in an email they respond that yes, I will take you if you apply, and then if such a situation happens, your application would fail. So what you have to highlight is that whatever your research experiences are, and because of that you talk to this person, but apart from that you also found the work of XYZ person interesting, and like just mention them, like you can mention their names in the SOP directly. That's not an issue.
Okay, I have a couple of follow-up questions, but I think if someone else has a question, I'll wait. The moderators can.
Okay, maybe we'll wait for a couple of seconds if there's someone else with a question. Vedang, maybe you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks a lot. So, first question: do you think it might be a good approach to also mention names of people who are not from that department, but those are also the departments to which I won't be applying? So, say I'll be applying to the departments of, say, chemistry, and I have other. I mean, I've spotted other people who work on something similar, because the field in which I'm working is interdisciplinary. So it could happen that someone from the department of, say, material science or computer science and electrical engineering are involved in some way or are a collaborator. So even if I'm not applying to those departments, do you think it is a good idea to include those names too, in addition to 3 people from chemistry?
Yeah, I know one of the cases. So one of my friends from Vienna, so one of my colleagues from Vienna here, he applied to electrical engineering, but he wrote um, the names of a few professors from physics department, and it worked well for him, and he's still working in the physics department. So it doesn't affect your application negatively, I think, but it depends on the university. If a university allows you to switch the department or work with a PI who is not in your department, but I guess most of the US universities do. So go for it. There's not such a problem. I guess you can do that.
Yeah, it's not even about switching. It is just that if I want to portray myself as a good fit for the university, and I mean, this is not something that I'll be making up, of course. It's just that if I see collaborators in other departments who are working in this field, and that maybe enhances my chances of doing good research in that field in that particular university. So, do you think it is a good idea?
Okay,
So
so
I
Yeah.
think
yeah,
that. No, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So I'll give you another example. So I applied to electrical engineering department, but my work is gonna, I mean, it will be mostly in fabrication, circuit design, testing, um, so many of these things. So there was an option at that time during my application to Princeton that if I want to be considered for a joint PhD program with material science and engineering. Material science and engineering is not a department at Princeton, but they offer joint PhD programs. So I did opt for this, and now they had some orientation or something. I went there, so I'm a part of material science department too. So I don't think that it affects your application negatively, or I would say that maybe it makes you a better fit for the university, as you said. Maybe yes.
All right, thanks a lot. And one last question, if that's all right. So, I'm
Sure.
not sure if people here are in the position to answer this, but I'll still put it away. Do you think, or to what extent do you think you will be flexible enough to say choose your topic of research when you actually start your PhD after you're done with the coursework? Because in Europe it's predefined, or in some sense you have a lot to say in your application process about the exact field or the exact project on which you'll be working. I should say project, not field. So do you think it's the same for US? So will you have will everything for that project related to whatever you'll be doing in your PhD be in your hands, or will your guide have, say, a majority stake in what you do?
I don't have an answer, but I think it must depend on the. I think it's quite a general question, and if for some guides they might be flexible. For some guys, like Shashwat said, some guys might have a project already, and they would want you to do that. So, for instance, I will give an example of not US, but someone when I applied to a university in Japan, where the advisor, once I got selected, the advisor did say that for the next few years, these are the projects I will be doing and nothing else. So if you want to work with me, you have to do this, no questions asked. But there will be other advisors who are more flexible in the sense are open to different avenues. So my answer is it depends on advisor. But yeah, Ruchira.
So one thing to note here is that in the US, the way things work is that the professor will be writing a grant, and then your research will be funded. So I think in experiments you do get funding for the entire duration, but in theory the way it works is that you will be funded through that grant for some time, and then through TAing for some time. So it is possible that since the professor has already written a grant, your research topic might be like a bit restricted. But at the same time, I think there is some flexibility. Like I know a senior right now here in the chemistry department who said he wrote his own research proposal. But I mean, obviously, you can't be very, very flexible, but at the same time, there is some flexibility and some freedom to choose what you want to.
Another thing, so I mean, even if say you have, so in Canada especially, there are direct PhD admissions. So you would join a particular lab directly. If that is the case, and usually the guide already has like a major project that they want you to work in. But so in one of the labs that I'm working in, they I mean, you always know what's happening around, and there are at least like 5 or 6 different projects that are happening, and a lot of labs encourage you to participate in the other projects that are happening. So, depending on how wide the scope of the lab that you're working in or the collaborators of that lab is, you could always, if not as a main project, take on things that interest you more as a side project.
All right, thank you so much. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so any more questions? Or this has been much longer session than expected, but I think it was very nice. So we'll pause for a few seconds for questions and then we will end. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think most of the
thanks a
people
lot.
who are still remaining in this meeting are from MS16 only, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But okay, I should still formally thank everyone who's been here, especially Shashwat and Ruchira, because it's very early in the morning for them. So thanks everyone. We will post this session soon on YouTube. And yeah.
Yeah, and we'll come up with, I don't know if it matters to say here, but we'll come up with chemistry and bio
Biology.
sessions soon.
Soon, yeah. Okay, thanks a lot, all of you guys, for coming.
Thank you.
And take care.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.